Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you, and a very warm welcome to our second fireside conversation. So I know for my German colleagues, it certainly doesn't feel very fireside-y, but there are many other people joining from other regions and parts of the world where perhaps it actually does make sense to sit next to a fireplace. My name is Najla Rettberg. I am the coordinator of Base4NFDI, and I'm based at the University of Dresden. And I want to say quickly that this session is actually being recorded. You can view it afterwards on our YouTube channel, and you will see that most of the functionalities you have at your fingertips have been disabled, but you will be able to put questions in the Q&A afterwards, and Rosie and I will handle them towards the end. So I would like to start by thanking our co-organisers, the ARDC, but also the Research Data Alliance. For those of you who don't know RDA, please do look it up. It is a wonderful grassroots membership organisation that is building the bridges to data sharing solutions across the globe. It is free to join as an individual, and you can get directly involved with many of the groups and the plenaries and many of the events. There is also institutional and organizational membership available. Before I introduce our very esteemed guest today, I would like to say a few words about the NFDI, the organization that I represent. This stands for the National Research Data Infrastructure in Germany. It is a large and completely unique endeavor. It started in 2020, and it's bringing together many different disciplines across the huge and varied research field in Germany to build infrastructure for research data management and to encourage fair practices across the field, and really to develop many services that are fit for purpose for researchers and doing a lot of work reaching out to them and advocating for open science. There is an office in the south in Karlsruhe, and then around that, across Germany, are these 26 different consortia working on these solutions. And then there is my initiative, Base4NFDI, which is building solutions that are cross-cutting for all these different disciplinary consortia. So services that are really making sense across the board, generic research data management and open science services. And we're working, to make these services appropriate to the community. And of course, they need to be long lasting. And that's where this conversation comes in, because, long-term operations, sustainability are completely crucial to how we are going to manage ourselves in the future and build, enduring infrastructure. And I think what would be really interesting is in this conversation to pull out what are these ways of really making infrastructure work for us at a national environment. And so we're talking to many different leaders, and we're having these fireside conversations this year. And we've talked to, in April, Michael Schull, CEO of the Data Alliance Research Canada. And we want to talk to other leaders in research in countries across the globe. And I'm completely delighted to invite you to have a conversation and enjoy our conversation with Rosie Hicks. So you can rewatch Michael and our conversation from back in April, and he pulled out many different facets of sharing data, but not only that, but about building a coherent national and sustainable research infrastructure. So addressing issues such as workforce retention, evolving technical needs on the landscape, AI, and so on, and working towards long-term sustainability. So Rosie, it is a complete honor to introduce you. And for those of you who have met and have got to know Rosie, she is an inspiring, I would say, grounded and hands-on and hugely knowledgeable leader of the ARDC. And the ARDC is the Australian Research Data Commons. It is a national organisation in Australia, and it plays like a critical role, I would say, supporting research or effective research data management. And that resonates here. That sounds a lot like what NFDI is doing. It was founded 2 years before NFDI in 2018, and it merged three previous organisations. That's the Australian National Research Data Service, NECTA, which was the e-research collaboration, and the Research Data Services. And its mission, Rosie, I will just say this, is to enable Australian researchers to access, to manage, and to share high-quality data and computational resources. So again, a lot like what NFDI is doing, and really to enhance the impact and efficiency of Australian research efforts. So Rosie, I do want to highlight some items from your bio. You are, I think, really above all a research infrastructure leader. You've had over 20 years building your national capabilities. Your career has spanned Japan, the UK, Australia. And what's interesting for me is that you've worked on product development, technical marketing, and have worked across many different sectors. You are one of our international advisory board members here at Base4NFDI. And if that isn't enough, you are one of Australia's top 100 women of influence. Congratulations. And you are a superstar of STEM. You have been included in programs, industry mentoring network in STEM. So that's a real accolade. And I think what's interesting for me is that Rosie has really transformed perhaps a more project environment into something really a national infrastructure that is truly enduring and lasting. And lastly, according to the ARDC staff engagement survey last year, 87% indicate that they are proud to work for ARDC. So that's really great. There is high staff morale among your team. So, dear Rosie, Brit to Brit, I will ask you how the weather is. And then I would like you to tell us a bit about what makes the Australian research landscape special, so we can fit the whole context of our conversation into that. And I also gather that you have a very special birthday coming up. So, Rosie, welcome. Lovely to have you.
Thank you, Najla. Many thanks for the opportunity to join the Fireside Conversations across 2026, because I think exploring these themes, they run through all of our national research infrastructures, and we can definitely support and learn from each other. I can confirm that the fire is being lit in our sitting room as I speak. So after this, I will be sitting by the fire. So very, very appropriate. It's not terribly cold, but a fire is lovely. Brit to Brit, that's the weather for you. And of course, we could talk about the football, but you know.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, what's unique about the Australian context? Well, one of the things I think has served us very well is NCRIS. So that's the National Collaborative Research Infrastructure Strategy. And as you can see from my Zoom background, we're just about Monday week to celebrate, I like to say, the first 20 years of NCRIS. So a really big milestone for us there.
Yeah,
what's special about it? I think Australia was very forward-looking when it established the NCRIS scheme back in 2006 by undertaking a national roadmap for research infrastructure, and that in itself is not unique. We do have those globally in different countries, but Australia has committed to redoing the roadmap every 5 years. So in fact, I was on the expert working group in 2016. We're just coming up to another one now. And in between those roadmaps, which are recommendations to government, where the government should support research infrastructure, the government responds with 2 investment plans. So they're spaced a couple of years apart. Theoretically, there's a bit of give in that. But this notion of a regular commitment to road mapping, followed up by a response from government, has allowed us to build, whilst there's a lot of change on the way through and it's not perfect, we still have some uncertainties coming up to deadlines, but it has allowed us to build a known, enduring national scheme.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really an anchor for us.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe before we sort of dig deeper, perhaps you could explain a little bit about the services you have at ARDC. I mean, I'm looking at your web, you have I can see over 21, but then I can also see some discipline specific ones. And I think that is also of interest to the NFDI audience. Could you just give us a quick overview of that, Rosie, and then we can dig into
Certainly. And I think one of the interesting things here is the way that that portfolio needs to change with time.
So you
So
call it a
some of
portfolio.
I did call it a portfolio.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, yeah.
Mhm.
That was just natural. That
Yeah.
wasn't a special meaning, but the portfolio of offerings needs to change with time. So if we go back to the Nectar Research Cloud, it's our national research cloud. Researchers can gain access through a merit-based allocation. That is based on OpenStack, and it was established back in 2013. At the time, absolutely groundbreaking for collaborative research to be able to have this compute environment. The world has changed. Much more compute, commercial compute, hyperscalers is available. We look for what's the niche now in 2026 for Nectar.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, it does map to particular sectors. So health and medical data, highly sensitive data, that's where we're optimizing an underpinning service right now. Other examples of underpinning services would be our national persistent identifier agenda. So we're seeking to roll that out across all of our host institutions, our universities here in Australia. But then on top of that, as digital research infrastructure becomes completely embedded in the research cycle, we look more at, and I think this maps so well to NFDI, we look to what are the discipline-specific requirements. Now, we don't seek to cover everything, but we have 3 really significant thematic efforts at the moment. The first, focused on health and medical data, we call it people.
Mm-hmm.
The second, earth and environmental sciences, no surprises, we call it planet. It is what it says on the tin.
Yeah.
The final one is the humanities, arts and social sciences and indigenous data as well. So for each of those communities within the organisation, we might be using very, very similar thinking, but building things that fit that community's needs at a particular point in time.
Yeah. And that's very much the thinking of NFDI. These are the experts in their communities and they're reaching out to the very different needs across the disciplines. But maybe we'll get back to that in a minute. What I really would like to ask you about is, and I'm really fascinated, I see the mantra, your claim is that ARDC, in terms of a research ecosystem, you have at the core people, skills, and data. And as we're thinking of these, sustaining what we want to sustain, how we sustain the services, it's very clear that people at ARDC they are the infrastructure. They are equally, part of the infrastructure as data is. And so perhaps you can, what is your take on that? What about the people in all of this, and how can we successfully sustain these highly skilled individuals that will want to stay at NFDI? And what can we learn from you, Rosie, and how you've built up that approach?
It's actually something that's baked into NCRIS, and it dates back to about 2015. And there is a very deliberate national recognition that research infrastructure includes people as well. Now, ARDC is actually my 3rd NCRIS infrastructure. I started in the world of microscopy, and I moved from there to nanofabrication. And both of those have really exciting labs filled with things that go ping. stainless steel and flashing lights.
Mm, mm,
And indeed, when I moved over to ARDC, just before it was incorporated in 2019, I remarked that I was going over to the dark side.
oh,
But
okay.
the dark side that is data, I did it for a reason. But the key point is when we're working with data, it's harder to communicate what we do. We don't have the flashing lights. And so when I say to our team, and I do say this fairly regularly, that they are our most important asset,
Mm,
I genuinely mean it.
mm,
So I'm on record.
yeah.
Um, One of the things, though, so there's a couple of things I could mention, but one of the things I think is incredibly important to recognize, if we put the person at the center of it, that means we seek to support their career progression.
Mm,
So wanting to hire someone and put them in a role and have them there till the day they die, retire, win the lotto, whatever you like,
mm,
that doesn't actually serve them.
okay. Yeah.
So we think, how do we build the skilled workforce as well? I'm really thrilled that our Indigenous internship program is now in its fourth year. And as well as bringing people on at the start of their careers as interns, this year we're really seeking to build in governance experience by participation in our highest advisory committees.
Mhm,
So that's building from early in people's careers. And then the other critical part is, in a rapidly changing world, how do we ensure that people continue to develop the right skills? So I'm really delighted that very recently, within the last couple of weeks, ARDC received a significant grant from the federal government to run a digital skills uplift program across all of NCRIS. So we have 26, different NCRIS capabilities in Australia.
mhm.
ARDC will be running this activity to drive the skills uplift for the infrastructure professionals. We're not trying to do all of the researchers, that sits with
Mm,
the different capabilities, but what is it that the infrastructure professionals, whether they're in astronomy or microscopy or high performance compute, how can we share the uplift journey? So it's really baked into our DNA.
I think that's really interesting. Training for infrastructure is not easy. We haven't really defined these components, but there's a lot of, it's not just research, it's not just infrastructure. It's a very unique set of skills that needs to come together. And I think we're all on the same journey with that. And all of us have learned so far in NFDI what these different aspects are. So maybe we could share knowledge, across the globe
Sure.
on that. And congratulations on this significant fund. So I think what you've also said is that if it's a springboard, that's also a good aspect. You don't need to bake someone in forever, and you can move people through their career progression to other aspects of infrastructure, and it's not seen as a negative if people, go to different.
If you think that we value the human as part of the infrastructure
Yeah.
and really nurture it, then when that human moves, in our case, maybe it's to a center of excellence, to run a facility, to lead a program of digital infrastructure somewhere else, as I often say, they remain part of the ARDC family and we celebrate their success.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so that's one takeaway is that maybe with your new program, we can keep in touch about, upskilling. What there was the word you used. I should have noted that down. Building these competencies.
Lift. Digital infrastructure uplift, digital research skills
Uplift, yeah, I
uplift.
think. Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. Um, so, I mean, you've explained a little bit about your move to ARDC project, project to service. This is a sort of the critical thing for us. Research infrastructures are really as good as their usage. Choosing which service will remain is a challenge. We all need to work on that. Some services will not remain. What was the process you set out, Rosie, for people, planet, and indigenous infrastructure? How did you choose them? And importantly, how did you keep the community on board? What were the steps? What can we learn from the steps you took to choose those three thematic areas, and what, yeah, not one size fits all. So could you just tell us about how, how you went about identifying them, and what were the structures you had to build and the teams?
So I think it's important to state at the start, we have three right now, and to my mind, there are definitely gaps. I do have plans for others, but we have three right now. So why did we start with those three? Well, you mentioned that ARDC was formed by a merger, so we weren't starting from zero. And the predecessors, the antecedents in ANS, Nectar, and RDS, really were working at a time where digital infrastructure was absolutely in its infancy. And they had a role in seeding the development of tools and services and platforms. Jump forward, 5, 6, 7 years, and our challenge is not encouraging people. Our challenge, as you've mentioned, is really how do you sustain activities? So we moved from the idea of thinking, well, we can't just go through our open proposal process and choose some excellent collaborators, because there's simply too many. And we have to be really strategic in thinking about what we start. And so we thought, well, how do we do this? But the first thing we did is we looked very carefully at the communities we had partnered with previously. So very strong tradition of connecting with health and medical, with earth and environmental. The humanities, arts and social sciences is newer. That's a slightly different pathway. But we had our existing projects.
Yeah.
But we put a couple of, three other layers on top of that. We looked at where the funding for national competitive grants was going. So it wasn't just our partners. We wanted to look at the research community. Where was the grant money going?
Yes.
But we're also seeking through our mandate to support research translation and industry as well. So in Australia, we have something that supports research and development in industry called the R&D tax credit. And so we mapped again, where does the money go? It's the basic murder mystery. Follow the money. Where's the money go? And then on top of that, we put, where are the government priorities? So we had these 4 different types of things. Think of it as a Venn diagram. Where did they come together with the strongest showing? And that gave us our first 3, what we call now thematic research data commons.
Yeah.
So that told us where to start. And then from that, we had a very long 18-month process working with those communities to say, well, we've got the area. What are the gaps? What are the challenges right now for your community that digital research infrastructure needs to support? But I love your comment. I absolutely love your comment. Digital research infrastructure, it's only as strong as the users. If the users aren't there, it's not doing anything for us. So that's it. Put the user at the middle and build the rest around them.
So you you agreed on the priorities, and then did you then go back to co-design these solutions with the community? And are you doing this all the time, let's say in the people in the health sector, And do you have partnerships then with other institutions? Are you bringing them on board? And it's an ongoing. Do you revitalize your strategy every year? Is this how are you working looking forward?
Cadence isn't annual,
Mm,
but we came up with some focus areas,
hmm.
and we went to test them with the communities because we had
Okay.
enough experience from the history of projects with the community
Hmm.
to say, well, we think these are the challenges. So we tested them, and then we were able to prioritize, drop some, combine some. And our first funding window was for 5 years. So we said, well, we've got a set of activities. We're going to start and develop. So we build, then we operate them, and then we sustain them. That's the way we think about
Mm.
this. So in the build, you're not really measuring the users, but then you start operating, and then that tracking of usage comes
Mm.
in.
Okay.
Um, but the really core commitment from us is we go through to that tracking of usage. And
Yeah.
of course, the funding comes in here as well. If you don't get the funding, you're scuppered.
Yeah.
But tracking of usage helps us prioritize how we allocate resources to things. And then for the co-design uplift or check-in, as it were, that's halfway through the projects themselves. So
Hmm.
this year, with the Hassan Indigenous, it's already in flight. That's going back to the communities again. Have we built the right thing?
Yeah.
What are the ones that have got gaps? What are the ones that are really serving your purpose?
That's really, maybe I think we can learn from you on that, this iterative process. I think that's definitely of interest. I mean, could you give us an example, Rosie, of this? Is there anything that comes to mind that in any of these three areas that's worked well so that we can understand
One
how maybe.
example, I think, is a very common challenge. It's how do you find data and particularly sensitive data.
Hmm.
All right.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
in our health and medical focus for people, we started a project fairly early on in this, which was called I know it's called HASANDA. Health
Hmm.
Studies National Data Asset. That's what the acronym stands for.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And it slipped my mind for a minute there.
Hmm.
It involves 72 different partner organizations. So
Hmm.
it is a very complex project
Wow. Yeah, yeah.
that
Hmm.
have researchers that have received funding for clinical trials.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right. So we're looking to see how we can make sure that the results of those clinical trials can be found and reused. Um, So there's lots of complexities there,
Hmm.
particularly with all of these partners. And a huge part of the program was enabling the partners to have a very shared understanding and process for the data request and response.
Hmm.
So we were able to put a platform together, which has been launched nearly 3 years ago. It was July 23. Goodness, how time flies.
Hmm.
So Health Data Australia was launched. Researchers can go to that platform and interrogate it to find out what's available.
Yeah.
But then there's a very standard process that takes them back to whichever of the 72 organizations is relevant to
Yeah.
make that data request. And then the infrastructure at the organization has the processes, has the governance, and
Hmm.
has the ability to say yes or no to the researcher.
Yeah.
So we started that with clinical trials.
Hmm.
And then we said, okay, where to next? Well, cohort studies is in flight. Then you've got registries to follow, and then you're looking at how we build up a core pillar of infrastructure, as it were,
Yeah.
rather than starting lots and lots of projects.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So this is that what I say a lot to people
Mm.
is fewer, bigger activities.
Okay, that's a good, yeah. Fewer bigger activities then. Yeah.
That's it. Do the things no one else can do,
Yeah.
and a small number of them.
Right. Okay. So quality rather than quantity. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
and know what you're good at. And this coherent pillar as the reference point in terms of governance as well is also really important. So I think, all of the hard work in NFDI, and it is hard to bring these players together. We all know that, but we've started, and I think this trust is building. And I think if we can have the reference point in these disciplinary consortia as a starting point, this is really good. But thanks for the medical example. I think that will resonate a lot. So okay, so we have our services moving ahead, and as I said, some services maybe will fall off, some will be sustained, and co-partnered, and all the complexities will come with that. And you've done a lot of creative things around your data assets platform, all of the platforms program. But how what are your methods for keeping this service relevant? You've talked about co-development. Perhaps you could talk a little bit about, dare I say, marketing and keeping the researcher in your sites. User engagement is a huge, topic in our Base4NFDI team, how to really help people use the service and keep it developed along, user lines, as it gets more mature. Rosie, what have you done on that front to market services and keep them interesting?
Yeah, I think and this is great. We're not in the script at all here, Najla, because one of the things we didn't mention is the way that the ARDC is structured. Our simple organizational structure is put together based on the way we expect a staff member to interact with the researcher. So we have
Yeah.
four different teams.
Mm.
The most technical team, and one of them said this, not me,
Mm.
we shouldn't let them loose on a researcher without a translator. Right? So
Great. Yeah. Yeah. I see cheering
um,
hands from the team on that. That's really fascinating. Yeah.
yeah, so there are some that are not meant to be there. Our national coordination team are deeply embedded in the projects, but we have a key business unit which we call outreach. And outreach has three different teams. And it's across those teams that we're expecting very, very frequent interaction with the research community, but the staff in those teams have to have a broad knowledge. So the first of them is the engagements team. So you can imagine lots of time at conferences and the direct interaction with researchers. And I'm deliberately not using the word promotion because it's really about listening to the researcher and responding to say, well, have you thought of this?
Yeah. Yeah. Responding. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we do have a marketing and communications team that particularly look after things like our newsletter, our case books each year, and lots of their material. You think of the different stakeholders that we have to interact with, the researchers, the host institutions, the government environments. We have to do some activities tailored for them.
Yes.
And then the last team, which is still a significant number of people within that outreach, is the skills team. So we put the skilling of the researcher as a critical part of engagement with the services. If the researcher doesn't know what's available, what they can use, and how they can use it for their application, then it's not going to work. So I think it's this broader outreach covering engagement with researchers in a number of different ways.
And I mean, I think, yeah, so the things that come under outreach, interesting. Something that came out from the talk with Michael is about narratives and storytelling, and not to underestimate that importance. And I've heard that a couple of times. And, we need to talk to funders, we need to talk to the public, we need to talk to our partners who don't fully understand what we do. And I think communication is also a science. I read somewhere, it's a skill that we could also add that to the skills bucket. I think as well, because these stories are equally important and they're not dumbing down. We need to communicate that outside of our bubble. But have you used any marketing tools, Rosie? Any ways of, product going to the community and marketing, getting back and forth with?
I, I think I would respond to this in a slightly different way. And I am picking up Michael's comment on the narrative.
Mm.
We have to, we do have to tell stories, and we have to tell stories that resonate with the audience. So I'm going to give you an example. Right, persistent identifiers.
Yes.
Are they going to get people's blood racing?
Yep.
No?
For some.
How are we going to convince our stakeholders that persistent identifiers are the best thing since sliced bread? I'm going to tell you a story.
Please.
Imagine that you are a funding body. And I come in and I say, well, we need some support for our persistent identifier program. And they might say, oh, yeah, right, okay, off you go. Imagine if I go into them and I say, you have supported research and development for a long time. As an example, in 2007, you supported, and this is a real example from my previous role, a needle-free vaccine delivery method. It's called the nanopatch. Almost 20 years later, wouldn't it be fantastic if we were able to tell the grants that went into making that successful, the people, the instruments, the publications, the patents, the partners, so that we can tell better where we should be investing in future? Remember, I'm talking to a funding body, and they're going to say, yes, that would help us if we could demonstrate. Yeah. And then I say, what you need is research activity ID, a persistent identifier, and then they're hooked.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's the best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
But again, it comes back to, it's not quantity. It's some really careful, targeted thinking that's designed to tug at the heartstrings. It's about emotion, not facts.
And repeating it, getting the messages out repeatedly as well.
I think, I could quote a poem from The Hunting of the Snark. What I tell you 3 times is true. You cannot assume people hear what you say.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Yeah, and so don't be frustrated by it. That's fine. Remember our special, most precious asset. If all of the team are going with the same message, then you've got the amplification.
Yeah.
So it's about really clear internal communication as well as external.
Yeah. Okay. Rosie, well, we're coming to the end. I do want to ask, I have to, the AI question. As we look ahead to prepare strategy for NFDI and this uncertainty, and, we don't need to iterate that because we all understand we're in uncertain times, but how can we prepare or think about to shape our services with that on a practical level, with the AI, the changes it'll bring maybe for skills, but also for the actual services themselves? Do you have any practical advice for planning ahead? in that?
I think we're all in the same boat.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say it was advice. I would say it was more current thinking. We don't know if it's worked yet, but I think recognizing it's here. It's the reality.
Mm.
So the first question is, what are the implications? And the way that we're thinking about this is twofold. How do we use AI, and how does AI use our products and services?
Mm-hmm.
So with this two-pronged approach, we're thinking about how we use AI in the, again, I'm going to use that word, uplift in the quality of the data asset.
Yeah.
And, we never have enough resources for the data custodianship. So how can it make the scarce, precious resources we've got go further? That's one side. But then when we are preparing our data assets, for example,
Mm.
how do they need to change so they are, I don't know, this phrase has been used, it's not mine, fully AI ready?
Mm.
What is it that needs to be included so that the data is machine actionable, for example? And
Yeah.
so in our initiatives that we're really designing the work packages right now, we're thinking of both of those strands. The use of AI, and then, so it's a virtuous circle, the use of AI, and then the use by AI that's being implemented by the researcher, by the research community. So it's a very rapidly changing time. And I suppose the one other comment I would make that we are applying within ARDC is being prepared, having the sandpit to experiment, being prepared that we will try some things
Yeah.
and they won't work, and that's fine. But
Yeah.
taking that fast fail mindset that we see in the startup, but don't be frightened of trying.
Okay. So to have an innovation or a sandpit column is a good idea, then. That's always something to do. But that sounds also very pragmatic, and I think that's something we can take away. So I've taken here my pen's run out because I've been writing so many notes, Rosie, and so many things. So uplift and skills, I think that's something we can learn from each other. Um, Co-design, start it, build it, operate it, and then go back into the circle of trying again, and keep iterating a bit, keep improving the service step by step. If we're talking about services here, and then thirdly, outreach and all the many different important things that come under that, including user engagement, and communication and responding to user needs. We have a couple of minutes, and I think Michael Schul said he reiterated this triangle: compute, data, people. You say people, data, skills, and I think these are very similar national approaches. And I always like to ask, this question for the dear team from Base and for the NFDI colleagues who are going back to their Thursday, and working for open science in the trenches, and keep them believing in it. Rosie, what is your vision then for a national infrastructure? Why should we keep coming to work every day? Tell us.
My vision, and we talk about this at ARDC, is that knowledge infrastructure enables researchers to transform our lives. So I think, as well as, we think about the researcher, and I am actually answering a question we have from Sandra in the chat here. When we make the case to people, what works, what gets through, we have to link it to the impact at the end. And so the work that we are doing in the trenches with digital infrastructure is foundational for transformative research.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of us, Michael, yourself, up here in Australia, we all face the same big societal challenges. They're global challenges.
Yeah.
And in building this, and I think the fireside conversations are so important for building this international conversation of collaboration, um, we can have such an impact through that pathway.
Yeah. That's really inspiring, and thanks for the questions, and the snark has definitely inspired a couple of snark people who I know enjoy your poems and your
Brilliant, brilliant.
yeah, yeah. It's really great. It was really great to have you, Rosie. It's always a pleasure. It went too fast. We could carry on, and I hope we can collaborate further. We will be in touch. I hope you can come and see us at the NFDI, and so on. Have a good evening.
Well,
Yes.
in conclusion, perhaps we could say that we'll continue the conversation at the Research Data Alliance plenary in London in October, and invite everyone to come and join us.
Yes, indeed. See you in London. Enjoy your fireplace. Thank you. And I would like to say that we are delighted to have a third installment of our Fireside Chat in the autumn. We will be inviting Referencia, who are Latin American regional infrastructure who have built up many services and who will have a lot of insights to share with us from the other side of the world. So stay tuned. We will announce that date shortly. You will see Rosie in all her glory in our recording. I would like to thank the team, Melina, all of you who've worked really hard to get this all up and running, and to Rosie and her team as well. Have a good rest of your day. Sleep well. Enjoy the fire. Thank you very much indeed. Goodbye.
Thank you, Najla.
Thank you. Thanks.